Today, let's talk about flood control, or at least floodwater retention. For background data, City of Burlington engineers calculate the combined White River and Honey Creek flow at about 30,000 to 40,000 gallons per minute. That's how much water, on average, is flowing into the Echo Lake Mill Pond Basin and then flowing out the other end. Whatever flows in, flows out. Describing Echo Lake, figuring 7.5 gallons in a cubic foot of water, and figuring that Echo Lake averages out to about 3 feet deep, shallower upstream, deeper, closer to the dam, we get about 22.5 gallons in each 3 cubic feet from surface to lake bottom. There are 43,560 square feet on the surface of an acre, which means at an average depth of 3 feet, you have 980,100 gallons per acre. Echo Lake is approximately 70 acres. So for total volume, we have 68,607,000 gallons of water filling those 70 acres to an average depth of 3 feet. Remember that we have water from the White River, Honey Creek coming into that basin, an average of 30,000 to 40,000 gallons per minute, and if left to its own watery behavior, it all would just naturally flow out the downstream exit near Veterans Terrace and the Milwaukee Avenue Bridge. Let's pretend the basin is empty, that there is no water being stored in that reservoir. If we then block that downstream exit at the other end of the lake bed, if we construct a barrier so no water can escape, but allow water to keep entering at 30,000 gallons per minute, it would take about 40 hours to fill Echo Lake Basin to a depth of 3 feet, its current depth. This is what the City of Burlington has with the current dam, a filled and perpetuated Echo Lake. In fact, City of Burlington policy is to keep the water at full, to purposefully have water consistently flowing over the top of the barrier, the dam, to always be overcresting. Policy is to keep the lake filled as much as possible, as high as possible, to the very top of the dam, so that any new water coming in from the White River, Honey Creek doesn't have any place within the lake to stay. Any new water has to go over the dam. It's the same as when you put a glass under a faucet in your kitchen or in your bathroom, and you fill the glass with water right up to the very top rim, and then keep adding water to the glass. It has to overflow. It doesn't have any place left in the glass to stay. The same is true when we look at reservoirs, storage basins, mill ponds, and lakes such as Echo. Once you have the water at the dam level, at the top of the dam, any new water coming in has to go out. It can't stay in the basin. It's just going to flow over the top lip and move downstream. Now, flooding. What would happen if the flow of water coming in via the White River, Honey Creek doubled? What if there was a weather event that doubled the flow from 30,000 gallons per minute to 60,000 gallons per minute? With our current setup, all 60,000 gallons per minute have to move through the lake basin and flow out over the dam. There is no room behind the dam to store extra water. It all will come tumbling over the dam and move downstream into downtown Burlington. If the lake bed was empty, if the lake bed held no water other than the average river flow rate typically within its banks, it would take 19 hours to fill up to 3 feet deep before there would be the same level of water that we have right now with Echo Lake. Yes, some excess water would certainly flow out down past Echo Lake, but it would be hard for all of it to leave at once because that riverbed isn't big enough. It's made for about 30,000 gallons or so at any particular time. So most of that water is going to slowly fill up in the empty lake bed, but it would take about 19 hours. And that's assuming that none of it gets out. So it's actually going to take longer than that before the doubled water flow would have any impact downstream. 19 hours of double the flow before you have any impact. That's a long storm. Let's triple the typical flow. It's a really big weather event. Lots and lots of rain. 90,000 gallons per minute coming down the White River, Honey Creek. it would still take over 12 hours to get the empty lake bed of Echo Park filled to its present level. There would have to be a 12-hour weather event before you would see any real flooding impact into downtown Burlington. Let's take it even further. What if it was a massive flooding experience with 10 times the regular flow of water coming into Echo Lake? What if it was 300,000 gallons per minute? We would still have almost 4 hours of filling the empty reservoir before equaling the water depth Echo Lake now has every day. And again, yes, some of that is going to move downstream earlier. Some of that is going to be pushed by the water behind it and exit downstream. There is going to be an increased flow there. But you have a place to put water for at least 4 hours before you see any equivalent of overcresting, before you would see any real detrimental damage being done downtown. Once again, you know that normally and typically there's 30,000 to 40,000 gallons flowing in per minute. The lake itself holds just over 66 million gallons of water, and there's an exit area that typically allows 30 to 40,000 gallons per minute to leave. If the lake bed, the basin, the reservoir that is today Echo Lake was not pre-filled, you would have the ability, the resources, to tolerate weather events that lasted for 4 hours, 12 hours, 19 hours. It is hard to imagine that the Burlington area would have 4 straight hours of deluge at 300,000 instead of 30,000 gallons per minute. If there is such a monster storm, there would certainly be flooding upstream. Certainly the White River and Honey Creek would have breached their banks. But there would be sufficient area where Echo Lake is now to store most of that water, not get overfilled for at least 4 hours. The dam that keeps the water in Echo Lake, the dam that creates the waterfall, also keeps Echo Lake from being able to defend us against flooding. The dam being there means that any extra water at all that comes into the lake has to come through the lake and has to exit immediately. When the glass is already filled, whatever else you put in it has to overcrest, has to flow over the lip, has to be part of the flooding downstream. Good flood control means having reservoir areas that can detain floodwaters. Good flood control means not having a dam so pre-filled that there is water overcresting every minute of every hour of every day. Good flood control means having some extra space to absorb catastrophic events. Right now, we don't have that. Keeping the dam means we won't have that. Removing the dam, restoring the river, gives us far better ability to mitigate flood situations. Thank you.